Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, where we aim to add value to people's lives. You can listen to us live every Wednesday and Thursday at Lunchtime Series on ebizradio.com, where we talk everything leadership, coaching, and marketing. And you can catch us on the latest podcast series or your podcast channels today on the Lunchtime Series on all available podcast channels. Joining me is co-owner and director of Raintree Business Coaching, Angela Heeley, joining me today for our session. Angela, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Kevin. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. And so we have started in our last conversation. We started speaking about our the wings concept, the work industry neutral growth skills. And from our unpacking this and starting to sort of revel in what this is and really get our fingers and brains sucked into it, we've started really looking at some of the unpacking these areas. And one of the first ones we started with was creativity. So, like from your position, I know that you also found some wonderful stats for us. But before we dive into that, I mean, creativity, just as a general thread of conversation, creativity is the process of creating in a way that is new, useful, and making things better. And I know that one of the things that we've chatted about along this, the wings concept. And guys, if you haven't seen the wings concept, go and check it out on YouTube and check out the other podcasts. There's a really good conversation around the wings concept. And creativity is one of those core primary skills that we're going to be talking about. But what's beautiful about creativity is we also start understanding that some people kind of go, well, I'm not a creative person. That's not for me, right? And you had some really good insights on that. Don't you want to share with us, a little bit about why this sort of stands out for you and what stands out for you about it?
So, Kevin, for me, I actually think creativity is one of the most critical things that we need to be leaning into in the modern world. With the advent of artificial intelligence, which has been coming at us for years, but now is really, really prevalently here. The fact is that so much of business is going to be the same as. And what's going to set businesses apart is the ability to look at processes, customer engagements, relationships, even products, and say, okay, well, how do I make it a little bit more new, a little bit more useful, a little bit better? It's not about being a painter or an artist or a sculptor. It's not about what conventionally creativity has been aligned with. I think more and more the ability to take something in the business world and to reinvent it or reimagine it or just enhance it is going to be what's going to keep businesses ahead, and it's going to keep them relevant, and it's going to be what's going to support us being sustainable and achieving what we need to achieve.
And I'm so glad that you say it that way, because I think when you hear the word creativity, everyone does kind of go, well, I'm just, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And so many people use that phrase, and you kind of go, no, actually, if you sit back and if you've come up with a system and you've come up with a strategy and you've come up with a solution for a business, for part of your business, that in itself is creativity. There's a lot of creativity of thinking, how does this fit into that, fit into that, fit into that? And what's beautiful about the wings concept is that it shows us and through evidence and showing us the similarities of all the publications out there, that creativity is at the forefront of one of those primary skills that we actually need to cultivate. But we also found, why are we resisting creativity? And you came in, one of the things you found out a Forbes article,
Terrifying Forbes article, Kevin.
I mean, you read these stats to me, and I was like, oh my God, like this is exactly why we need to have this conversation. Don't you want to share that with us? Because that was pretty astounding.
So I had heard the statistics before, but when I went and found them again, I must admit it was a real reminder. So in March 2020, Robin Schulman wrote an article for Forbes. And what they have done is that they've done a long-term study that has evaluated how creative individuals are over time. And the results show that at the age of 5, the children are 98, they have the ability to access 98% of their creativity. Now, that is just as they are entering the schooling system.
Yeah.
By the time they are 10 years old, that has dropped to 30%.
Sure.
By the time they are 15, that has dropped to 12.
Yeah.
And the most horrifying result for me is now they're out of school and they are participating in the working world. And by the time they are 31 years old, that's dropped even further to 2%.
Yeah.
So we can see that there's a huge amount of conditioning that is happening in the world that is saying, no, hide your creativity, hide your new ideas, hide your innovation. It's not safe. Because if it was safe, those results would not be happening.
And I think speaking to that, there's a construct we're living, and we don't really understand the construct of the societal influences that we all have just been so susceptible to, and kind of going, oh, well, this is normal. This is just normal for everyone. But to think that, like at our ages, I'd hate to even think, okay, I hope to think that I'm slightly creative, but I mean, but at our ages, I don't even want to know what that measurement is. But, from the age of 31% or 31 years old, and it's down to 2%, you kind of go, wow, there's that massive gap, right? So knowing that, and can we imagine, let's play pretend for a second, what if like 50% of our organizations started using creativity as a way to change business, as a way to come up with better products, as a way to find more solutions? Because quite clearly it's not even being touched on because of the stat, right? And yes, it's just a statistic, and not everything's written in stone. But from being a stat that we kind of look at, you kind of go, well, if we're looking at business today, I often find that sentiment is like, oh, creativity is also not my responsibility. It's for those people.
So, Kevin, I actually think a lot of people are creative, but they're creative in the spaces where they feel it's safe. So in our homes, often in our community environments, because it is safer there. But even there, what's fascinating is that the habits we've got into, because we've come from command and control environments, comply or die, and it's all because when I am comfortable with something, creativity by its nature forces me to think that maybe what I'm doing isn't as good as it could be. And it isn't as, it could be different, and difference makes us uncomfortable. Change makes us uncomfortable. And yet we have to get fit at it, because when you become just a me too in the current world, what ends up happening is you vanish and you become less and less and less relevant. So it's interesting for me that we as a society are now being it's being demanded of us that we start stepping into the courage to be creative and to support our children to be creative. Because if they are creative and innovative and willing to be open to the fact that, well, it doesn't mean that what I've been doing is wrong. It just means that maybe we can level it up. We can take it to the next level. Maybe it was right, but the world has changed and now it needs to change to accommodate and live with the world. If we can get to that space of acceptance and opening ourselves to the fact that it's not a maybe, it's a must to be creative, because we cannot stay ahead of the pack if we're not.
Yeah.
We cannot. But it is vulnerable. And it does take immense courage.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, what we're talking about is what Walter van der Velde identified is, in fact, it's more than that. It is what is going to help you to remain relevant in the work environment.
Yeah.
Because artificial intelligence cannot be creative.
Yeah. And people will have that sort of argument that, yeah, but you can sort of put in data and kind of go, okay, create this, but that's still humans putting in the data.
Yeah.
Right? So you can suggest for artificial intelligence to help and assist, but the actual core primary skill of creativity doesn't just originate out of artificial intelligence.
We create the parameters. We create the idea.
Yeah.
The artificial intelligence helps us to apply it quickly, efficiently, and accurately.
Yeah.
But the idea is a uniquely human thing. And Kevin, if I look in the work environment and I consider for a moment how, as business, knowing that there's this risk, knowing that there is this fitness at not being creative.
Yeah.
How do we start helping people to be creative? Becomes the question that I start asking myself. And you know this, in the coaching that we do, sometimes the work we are doing is getting people to think outside of what they have always done and what they've always known. Now, isn't that creativity?
Yeah. But also, like, I'm just thinking around where this sort of the creative sort of blocking in my life happened was, the fear of, my mother always shoved me in front of people and said, sing. And I was like, I always had that whole fear component, and I sang out of fear, not because I passionately wanted to sing, but I was fortunate that I had this gift. But the creativity sort of started, it evolved, but in the comfort and the safety of my home, right?
Yes.
And we often have this block from creativity because of fear of rejection and fear of criticism and fear of, what if this changes everything and I'm not comfortable with that change. But hand in hand to that comes confidence, right? How can I really support my creativity, even if it's not the best idea? But how do I support that with a bit of confidence? And I think that whole fail fast, fail forward kind of
Yes.
methodology and thought process comes in there, because then you kind of going, okay, cool, so that didn't work, but maybe this works, and you start tweaking. But just to exclude creativity from business and from the human component of how we're going to direct our lives, it's really, really important that we actually start recognizing it as an evolution of who I am for the future of business. And I think that's also partly, writing the book. I mean, I'm just looking now at one of the chapters in the book speaks of Ambiel's 3 components of expertise, motivation, and creative thinking skills, right? And putting those 3 in a Venn diagram where you really have a sort of tool to kind of use to actually get your brain starting to think around creativity.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys also mentioned a tool that you guys often use.
So Kevin, we use what is called the Disney process. And it actually comes from Disney. Walt Disney used to apply it when he was coming up with his next great, brilliant, beautiful idea.
Yeah.
And what's very important within the Disney process is that it creates a safe space for each of the steps in creativity. So, for example, you start off in the Disney process, and it is a criticism-free space. So you start off and you come up with great ideas or bad ideas. It doesn't matter. You throw them in the pot and you see how you stir them up, and how, very interestingly, even better ideas often come from the bringing together of a couple of thoughts and ideas. What is critical in the Disney process, and in step one of the Disney process, is that you are not allowed to criticize, judge, negatively comment on any of the ideas. The goal of the idea generating space is to create it one where there is a lot of fun and innovation, and it's safe to be a little bit crazy and a little bit bizarre and very creative. It's interesting because you then work the process through, and it's only very close to the end do you then take the ideas and go, okay, so we've now identified the best ideas. Now, what could make this fail?
Yeah.
And now we judge it. Now we criticize it. And in fact, the very powerful aspect of that criticism and judgment is to refine it, because we're not saying it will fail. We are saying, we think this is a great idea. We've refined it, but now let's make sure that we make it fail safe.
Yeah.
And so it's only close to the end that the default of a lot of people, which is to immediately go, no, only at that point are you allowed to go, no, I don't like this aspect of the idea. Now, it's not the whole idea. It's the aspect of the idea that we then find a solution for, or we find a workaround for, or we make the difficult decision that actually that element is too much of a risk and we're going to remove it from the process.
Yeah.
So
just to give you, sorry, just to break that down, guys. So the Disney process in itself is to have to create a safe space for people to play in. Then you need the confidence and courage to be able to say, okay, these are the ideas, and allow for those ideas, but then also be prepared for the feedback, right? So that's a quick 3 sort of step process, and then go back to the beginning and do it until it's absolutely refined.
Yes.
So that you really, really have honed that product, that process, or whatever you're actually working on, and it becomes it sort of molds into this actual thing at the end of the day. And it's a beautiful process so that everyone is safe, secure, but also allowed to disagree if they have to.
So Kevin, what I think is very important to understand about creativity is that what helps creativity achieve its absolute best is the feedback. So what often happens is I come with an idea, and now I present my idea, and now I think you must accept my idea 100%. But it's never as good as what comes out of if I collaborate with others and I get their input, and my idea gets refined and molded and turned into something absolutely magnificent. It's like painting. When we paint, we don't just go with the first version of what we paint. There's always multiple layers to any masterpiece that is a painting. And so it's the same with a creative idea. It's about, how do I come with the initial idea, and now how do we make it have 3 dimensions and have it have all the emotional aspects in it, like a painting? How do we consider all the different aspects, and how do we get it so that it is a masterpiece? So what's quite interesting is the ability to prepare yourself for the feedback, I think, is a critical success factor in learning to be creative.
Yeah.
Knowing that feedback is a necessary and an important part of creativity allows you to accept that as part of the process. Now, there's a difference between getting feedback and getting critical judgment that shuts the process down. And I think that that's the subtle difference that I think allows for creativity to be something that is born and bred versus something that is stopped.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's such a significant point, because when you get the feedback, there's a growth to what it is you're creating, and that's you might not see it from a certain perspective. So that's really important. But also, one of the points that stand out for me here is, who are you actually getting the feedback from? And that also relates back to that Brené Brown, where she says, if you're not in the stadium and sweating and bleeding and full of dust, and you're not in the arena and you're not doing it, then I'm simply not interested in your feedback. And I think that sort of summarizes how I look at feedback. I'm all cool for people having feedback on my work and what I do and how I do it. And I think you guys, when we work together, it's something that we do quite often, is that we saw, what about this and what about this? And we do co-create at a whole new level, and it becomes such a beautiful process. But I would only allow that because I know that, this comes from someone who's in the trenches with me, someone
Yes.
who's there looking at it and wants the absolute best for
Yes.
this product. And I think that's a very important factor to consider.
Kevin, the other day, the gifts of social media, I was scanning through someone I follow, and they had posted the most beautiful model that said, so often we are resistant to feedback because it is me versus you. But in fact, when we are engaging creativity, what it needs to be is me and you sorting out the problem or coming up with a new product. But it's about us working together to create something new that is better, that is innovative, that is enhanced. The fact is, though, that we have to be able to step out of ego, and allow ourselves to be open to the feedback. Because feedback, there is always a gift in feedback. So I agree with you that, if someone is not in the space and they're just criticizing for the sake of criticism, we've all got busy lives. Can we just kind of find someone who can actually give us feedback that can help us to be better?
Yeah.
But also, how do we look for the gift that has come from the feedback? Because there will be a gift if we are willing to step out of ego and open ourselves to, so what am I being shown here that I wasn't comfortable seeing? That may be what we need to take this creative idea to like next level.
Yeah. And I think, to me, that lends to the next point, is because when you stepped out of ego and you kind of go, there's this creation thing happening, you respect the right people you're asking feedback from, and they're giving you feedback, and it becomes a co-creation of something that potentially could be bigger than you are. Then suddenly you kind of go, okay, this was the catalyst. I was the starting point of this process.
Yes.
And I could be, from that could grow this enormous, big message or big solution that I'm part of. But for you to be able to do that, your ego needs to be out of the way. Because and I've been there. I've been in that situation where I'm very proud and kind of like want to claim it. But what I've also recognized by doing that is I'm not allowing for it to be more than just me. And because of that, it doesn't always turn out or achieve what it should, or it could potentially, because I'm holding onto it so tightly. But when I share myself and I share my creativity as a gift, for a practical example, Pink, the artist, the singer, Pink, she's globally famous, and she writes unbelievable songs. And there was a show on YouTube the other day where she's listening to someone sing her song, and she's going, holy shit, this is like so amazing. I could never sing like that. And that was Pink saying that about someone singing her song.
Yes.
Out singing her song, like doing her song better than she was. But the fact is that she's not caught up in the ego. She's caught up into the unbelievable, beautiful expression of how this person added to what she created, and suddenly you go, okay, well, there's the reason why feedback works well. And feedback, there's the gift of feedback,
Yes.
because it could be interpreted in a whole different way.
I also think, Kevin, if we get back to the creativity,
Yeah.
the feedback actually feeds the creativity. When it is from the right people and it is done in the right way.
Yeah.
Feedback allows the creativity to just grow and level up and explore and sometimes go off on a strange tangent that ends up being miraculous.
Yeah.
And so, we often see creativity as me. I'm not creative, or I am creative. It's my creative idea. But what's the purpose of the creativity? Great artists had a purpose behind the message they wanted to send through their artwork. And it's exactly the same in business creatives.
Yeah.
There's a purpose behind the creativity. And how do we touch into that essence and allow the feedback to take it to the next level? Take it to the place where, in fact, the work is making the change in the world that we want it to make. It makes life easier, or it solves a problem for the customers, or it transforms the way the industry does this thing that has been a burden or has cost too much or whatever it is. It's fascinating. We look at artificial intelligence and, in fact, yes, it's going to make things faster. Well, look at the beautiful opportunity it gives for you and I and for everybody else out there who is willing to step into the courageous place of creativity to now take what we have and make it better, make it more, because we've got the time.
Yeah. One thing, the last point that I want to make on creativity today is to honor the process and the time it might take, right? Because some people put stuff together and they do it in a day, and they kind of go, well, I came up with this idea, and it's sort of divinely led, or however. Just some people have this spirit of creativity. But sometimes you start with something and you kind of put it on hold, and you kind of go, okay, well, maybe it's not right yet. Because if I look at, the wings concept, this is, something I looked at when we were in COVID. I was like looking at like, okay, so people are definitely, they're needing to change. People are going to change. Like you could see it in the semigration and the movement and the quiet quitting and the big resignation. All of those things started showing something's happening to how we do life and how we do work.
Yes.
Which means something's changing. And I was going, okay, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for the future of how we're starting to do business? So, at the moment, it wasn't relevant, and people were so caught up in COVID and that stuff and dealing with the trauma of all of it that it wasn't, no one was ready for this conversation. And here we are 2 or 3 years later, and you're kind of going, okay, now people are going, okay, we need to be aware. We need to be ready to, what if big changes like that happen again? And I think that's sort of honoring the process. So I, in that moment, thought, people are not paying attention to this. But now, having written the book and sort of try to unpack that a little bit for people and giving them solutions, it's taken the process this long. But now suddenly I can honor that and go, oh, that's there's been a culmination and a growth and a learning process happening in my creativity, and having you guys come on this journey with me and starting to unpack stuff, like it's becoming this bigger thing than me, right? And I think honoring that process is also important, and sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, Kevin, it's very profound. The fact is, creativity is a process, and creativity takes time. even, and I keep going back to like the masterpieces at a painting level, great songs. Yes, they kind of blur out, but then they get refined and they get tweaked, and you've got to find the tune, and you've got to find the beat, and you've got to find how it needs to come together for it to be its true potentiality. So for me, I agree. You do have to allow the process to follow. You also have to give it the time. And in a world where, burnout is sexy, to quote Brene Brown,
Yes.
it feels like kind of wasted time for me. Now I'm going to sit and I'm going to be creative. But it's becoming critical that we do that. Because if we're not doing that, what we're doing is the same as we've always done. And that means we are going to be behind the times. We are not going to be ahead of.
And I think that's a perfect note to end today's conversation, Ange, because, part of, and I find there's almost a chase that I think that's just a value system of mine. It's something I inherently have in businesses, wanting to know more and grow more and learn more and do more. And so for me, it comes almost naturally to want to evolve faster and know about, what's happening in 5 years from what's that going to look like. For other people, it's not. But I think the takeaway from today for me is, if we do not start understanding the evolution of human, that we, as much as AI is evolving, we need to prepare ourselves to evolve and level up on who we are and how we show up in the world. If we don't cognizantly start doing that and having a consciousness about how am I changing me, we're going to be left behind, because the companies and the corporates who are doing it they're gonna outwork you, and they're going to win at the end of the day. If you could sort of sum up, what do you want to leave today's conversation and the guys with today, everyone listening?
Kevin, for me, the most profound insight around the creativity stuff is that we've all got it. It's actually within all of us. When we're faced with a problem, we make a solution. It is what us human beings do.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is that people start exploring how they can have the courage to be able to stand up for that.
Yeah.
Believe in it and say what needs to be said. Because there's no, you have to start somewhere. You have to take the first step to expressing your creativity and allowing it to begin to make a difference in the world.
Allowing it to begin to make a difference in the world. There we go. I love it. I'm going to call it, guys, allowing it to begin to make a difference in the world. Angela Heeley, she's the owner and the director of Raintree Business Coaching, guys. Angela, thank you so much for joining me. That was a fantastic conversation. I'm hoping that people start really seeing the importance of this, because I think, we're going to start. We're going to put it out there, and we're actively creating and designing bespoke solutions for corporates around all of these things. Yes. So guys, get in touch and let's chat, because it's an important conversation. Angela, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Have a wonderful month, and we'll chat next month. In fact, I think you've got Leonie with you next month, so enjoy that conversation, and I'll see you in a couple of months' time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ange. Have a good one. Chat soon.
Bye-bye, everyone.